You're in a meeting. Someone's confidently explaining a solution that won't work, that can't work, because they fundamentally misunderstood the problem. You can see it clearly. The logic holes, the false assumptions, the inevitable failure. But they're nodding along, building consensus, momentum gathering behind an idea you know is doomed. And here's what makes it worse. You realize that explaining why they're wrong will take more energy than you have, require more patience than you possess, and likely end with you being seen as the problem. This isn't rare. It's your daily existence. You're surrounded by people who speak with certainty about things they don't understand, who mistake confidence for competence, who react emotionally when you try to introduce reason. And you've started to wonder if the problem is you. If maybe your standards are too high, your thinking too complex, your expectations unrealistic. Arthur Schopenhauer spent his entire life studying this exact phenomenon, not as an insult, but as a psychological and philosophical reality. He understood something that should both liberate and disturb you. The vast majority of human beings do not think. They react, they imitate, they follow. And when you're someone who actually thinks, who questions, analyzes, sees patterns others miss, you're not just different. You're operating in a fundamentally incompatible mode of consciousness. What you've been experiencing isn't personality conflict. It's a collision between two different types of minds. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what Schopenhauer discovered about this divide, why it's getting worse in the modern world, and most importantly, how to operate with strategic precision in a world that rewards intellectual mediocrity. Schopenhauer wrote, "The majority of men are not capable of thinking, but only of believing, and are not accessible to reason, but only to authority." What did he mean? In his time, Schopenhauer observed something that terrified and fascinated him. He watched people adopt beliefs not because of evidence or logic, but because those beliefs were popular, comforting, or came from authority figures. He saw crowds follow charismatic leaders into disaster. He witnessed intelligent arguments dismissed because they contradicted what people already wanted to believe. Reason, he realized, had almost no power over the human mind compared to emotion, tribal identity, and the desperate need for certainty. But today, it's infinitely worse because we've built entire systems that reward not thinking. Social media algorithms amplify the most emotionally reactive voices. Corporate structures promote confidence over competence. Educational systems test memorization, not understanding. We've created a world where appearing smart matters more than being smart, where having an opinion is valued more than having knowledge, where the ability to speak confidently about things you don't understand has become an actual skill. Think about the last time you tried to explain something nuanced, something with genuine complexity, trade-offs, multiple variables. Watch how quickly eyes glaze over. Notice the impatience. The demand for a simple answer, a clear villain, an easy solution. And if you dare suggest it's complicated, you're dismissed as indecisive, overthinking, or, most damning of all, elitist. Here's what Schopenhauer understood that most people miss. This isn't an education problem. It's a consciousness problem. The vast majority of people are not refusing to think deeply. They're incapable of it. Their cognitive architecture doesn't support sustained abstract reasoning. They experience discomfort when forced to hold multiple conflicting ideas simultaneously. Ambiguity feels like threat. Complexity registers as chaos. Have you felt this? That moment when you realize the person you're talking to isn't following your logic because they can't? This is the first mechanism, but it goes deeper. Your intelligence has made you incompatible with normal social functioning. Most intelligent people spend their lives trying to communicate with people who are fundamentally operating in a different cognitive mode. You're running analysis while they're running pattern matching. Schopenhauer observed, Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. In his time, he witnessed brilliant minds dismissed, ostracized, destroyed, not because their ideas were wrong, but because those ideas were invisible to ordinary consciousness. The target they hit couldn't even be perceived by the masses. But today, the gap has become a chasm, because we're not just dealing with different levels of intelligence, we're dealing with different types of consciousness weaponized against each other. The person who thinks in slogans now has the same platform as the person who thinks in systems. The person who mistakes intensity for insight has equal social authority to the person with actual expertise. Watch what happens when you're in conversation with someone of significantly lower intelligence. You make a point. They respond not to what you said, but to what they think you said, to the simplified, emotionally charged version their mind created. You attempt clarification. They become defensive, interpreting your precision as condescension. You try a different approach. They disengage entirely, labeling you difficult, arrogant, or too much. The conversation ends not because you were wrong, but because you were incomprehensible. Here's what Schopenhauer understood that most intelligent people learn too late. You cannot reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. Their beliefs aren't conclusions, they're emotional security blankets. Challenge them, and you're not attacking an idea. You're attacking their entire psychological infrastructure. Have you felt this in yourself? That exhaustion that comes not from being wrong, but from being constantly misunderstood? This is why intelligent people often feel profoundly isolated even when surrounded by others. Because loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about being unable to communicate what matters most to you with the people around you. But it gets deeper. The people least qualified to judge you are the most confident in their judgment. There's a particular torture intelligent people endure, being evaluated by those incapable of understanding what you're doing. Jung understood this perfectly. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. In Jung's era, he watched as genuinely original thinkers were pathologized, marginalized, destroyed by collectives that couldn't comprehend them. The tribe's comfort requires conformity. Anything that threatens the shared delusion, anything that reveals the shallowness of consensus reality, must be eliminated. But today, this mechanism has metastasized into something far more insidious. We've created cultures where the most vocal, confident, and emotionally reactive voices hold the most authority. The person who thinks longest before speaking is seen as uncertain. The person who acknowledges complexity is viewed as weak. The person who changes their mind when presented with evidence is labeled inconsistent. Meanwhile, the confident fool, the person who speaks with absolute certainty about things they barely understand, gets promoted, platformed, celebrated. Because confidence feels like competence to people who can't distinguish between them. Notice what happens in your workplace, your social circles, your family. The person who spent hours researching a topic before forming an opinion gets the same weight, often less weight, than the person who formed a strong opinion based on a headline. The strategic thinker who sees 13 steps ahead is overruled by the reactive thinker who only sees the next move. The person who asks questions is dismissed as negative, while the person who provides comforting oversimplifications is praised as a solutions person. You're being judged by metrics you don't respect, by people you don't respect, using standards that actively punish the very qualities that make you valuable. Your nuance is seen as indecision. Your depth is labeled overthinking. Your precision is called pedantic. Here's what Schopenhauer understood. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. The pressure isn't to grow. It's to shrink, to dumb down, to simplify your thinking until it fits into minds that can't expand to meet yours. Have you noticed yourself doing this? editing your intelligence, hiding your depth, pretending things are simpler than they are just to avoid the exhaustion of being misunderstood? This is why so many intelligent people develop a kind of quiet despair. Not because they're depressed, but because they're living in permanent translation mode, constantly reducing themselves to be comprehensible to people who aren't curious enough to meet them halfway. The third mechanism reveals where this really gets dangerous. Social systems reward mediocrity and punish excellence. The most disturbing thing Schopenhauer discovered wasn't that most people can't think. It's that systems naturally evolve to protect that inability. Schopenhauer wrote, "The wise have always said the same things, and fools, who are the majority, have always done just the opposite." In his era, he watched mediocrity organize itself into institutions, create hierarchies, build entire social structures designed to keep genuine insight from threatening comfortable ignorance. Today, we've perfected this system. Corporate cultures that claim to value innovation punish actual innovative thinking because it threatens established processes. Educational institutions that claim to value critical thinking fail students who question fundamental assumptions. Social movements that claim to value truth exile anyone who introduces uncomfortable complexity. We've built elaborate mechanisms specifically designed to keep intelligence from disrupting the comfortable consensus of mediocrity. Watch how this works in practice. You're in a group making a decision. You see a fatal flaw in the proposed approach. You raise it carefully, diplomatically, with evidence. Notice what happens next. Not engagement with your point, but social punishment. Eyes roll. Voices sigh. Someone says, "Here we go again," or "Can we just move forward?" The group cohesion, that warm feeling of agreement, has been disrupted, and you're the disruptor. It doesn't matter that you're right. You've committed the greater sin. You've made people uncomfortable with their own certainty. The intelligent person learns quickly. The cost of being right is often higher than the cost of being wrong. Speaking truth isolates you. Maintaining accuracy exhausts you. Refusing to participate in shared delusions marks you as the problem. Here's what should terrify you. These systems aren't accidental. They're emergent properties of group psychology. Collectives naturally evolve to protect their least capable members from the discomfort of their own inadequacy. And the most efficient way to do that is to pathologize, marginalize, or eliminate the people whose very existence reveals that inadequacy. Have you felt this? That sinking recognition that you're being punished not for failure, but for capability? This is the mechanism that breaks intelligent people. Not stupidity itself, but the requirement to pretend it's wisdom. But here's where everything shifts. But here's where Schopenhauer's wisdom becomes truly powerful, where understanding this dynamic gives you strategic precision others will never possess. Because once you see these mechanisms clearly, you realize something liberating. You don't have to play the game. You just have to understand that it is a game. Nietzsche, building on Schopenhauer's work, observed, "And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music." The masses aren't your audience. They never were. They can't hear the music you're hearing because they lack the frequency range. And that's not an insult. It's a strategic assessment. When you stop expecting intelligence from people incapable of it, you stop being disappointed. When you stop seeking validation from those who can't comprehend your work, you stop being wounded by their dismissal. This is where true power emerges. While others are trapped in reactive consciousness, believing what they're told, following what's popular, thinking in whatever frames authority provides, you're operating consciously. You see the patterns they're blind to. You understand the systems they're controlled by. You recognize the manipulations they fall for. Your intelligence isn't a social liability. It's an operational advantage. Here's your strategic framework. Engage with stupidity the way Schopenhauer did, with detached observation, not emotional investment. When someone reveals they can't think at your level, that's information. Not about your worth, but about what you can expect from that interaction. You don't get angry at a child for not understanding calculus. You simply recognize their current capability and adjust your expectations accordingly. While others waste energy trying to convince the unconvincible, you'll conserve your resources. While they seek approval from those incapable of meaningful judgment, you'll build work that speaks to those who can actually hear. While they dumb themselves down for social acceptance, you'll find the small percentage of minds that can meet yours, and those relationships will be worth more than 1,000 shallow connections. Remember that meeting from the beginning? The confidently wrong person building consensus behind a doomed idea? Here's what changes when you understand Schopenhauer's framework. You're no longer personally offended by their incompetence. You're simply observing a mind operating at its natural capacity. You're not frustrated that they can't see what you see. You understand they're literally incapable of it. Their cognitive architecture doesn't support that kind of perception. And in that understanding, you find freedom. Because here's the truth that brings peace. Most people will never understand you. They will never appreciate the depth of your thinking, the precision of your analysis, the years of work behind your expertise. They will continue to mistake confidence for competence, volume for validity, simplicity for wisdom. This will never change. You cannot fix it, cannot alter it, cannot reason humanity into higher consciousness. You can only accept it. And in that acceptance, you find your power. Because once you stop seeking understanding from those incapable of providing it, you stop giving them authority over your sense of worth. Once you recognize that their judgment of you is limited by their capacity to perceive, not by your value, their opinions lose their sting. This week, try this. When someone reveals intellectual limitation, instead of frustration, treat it like a doctor diagnosing a patient. Detached. Clinical. This person operates at this level of abstraction. This person processes information this way. This person requires this type of communication. Not judgment, strategic assessment. And then act accordingly. Save your depth for those who can appreciate it. Offer simplicity to those who require it. Preserve your energy for work that matters rather than battles that can't be won. Write in the comments, "I'm choosing strategic clarity over social approval." Schopenhauer spent his entire life largely ignored by the masses whose consciousness he so brilliantly diagnosed. His work found its audience decades after his death, among minds capable of understanding it. He wrote, "The wise have always said the same things, and fools, who are the majority, have always done just the opposite." He wasn't bitter. He was accurate. And in that accuracy, he found peace. Your intelligence isn't a burden to manage. It's a frequency others can't hear. Stop trying to make them hear it. Find those who already do.